Chapter 7, Tunnels, Part 2. The passage was too narrow for more than 2 ponies at a time. They proceeded down it, Twilight and Pinky first, Rarity and Fluttershy in the middle, and Applejack and Rainbow Dash in the back. A moment before they rounded a sharp bend, Pinky raised her foreleg in front of Twilight, and the group came to a dead stop.
"Another booby trap?"
Twilight asked, scanning the tunnel ahead for the telltale signs of a hidden pit. Pinky shook her head.
"Nope. Worse." "I see what you mean,"
Rarity said from behind Twilight.
This'll take a moment to deal with."
Twilight glanced over her shoulder. The sound of diamond dogs in pursuit echoed down the passage. She switched places with Rarity and faced toward the sound. She could web the passageway, or cast confusion spell down the tunnel, but she would prefer to conserve her resources. She had already burned through the majority of her spells, and only had a few powerful ones left in reserve. Fortunately, before the first diamond dogs came into view, Rarity made a sound of triumph. Twilight glanced over her shoulder and saw Rarity pull a rod-shaped object from the wall of the passage. It was a cobalt blue cylinder, about a hoofspan long, with a gemstone set in the end. Twilight recognized it as a spell wand, though she couldn't be sure what spell it held. Walking around the bend while the wand was still in place surely would have triggered it. Twilight turned her gaze back down the passage. She knew the diamond dogs were close. Even though they had yet to step into the light from her horn, she could see the light from their torches and hear their claws on the stone.
"There are so many of them,"
she thought. She might have to cast a spell anyway just to buy them some time. Before she could cast anything, though, she noticed Fluttershy's eyes glowing. From the sides of the passage at the limit of her light, Twilight could see insects emerging from the walls, both flying and crawling. They steadily swarmed toward the approaching diamond dogs.
"We moving or what?"
Rainbow asked. Twilight nodded and switched places with Rarity again. They proceeded around the corner, the pained howls of diamond dogs echoing through the tunnel behind them. She glanced at Fluttershy, realizing that, when pushed, the shy Pegasus could do far more than heal. As soon as they rounded the bend, Twilight stopped, gazing at the sight before her in awe. The tunnel had a natural sandstone cavern. Hundreds of dwellings were dug into the walls and the ceiling of the cave. But what shocked her the most was a diamond dog shaman wearing ceremonial garb made from bones, prostrated before them.
"Demon ponies, spare us!"
the shaman wailed. Twilight could tell from the tenor of the shaman's voice that she was female. Twilight blinked.
"We're not demons,"
she said automatically. The shaman glanced up at her hopefully.
"Then what is pony? We can wound these ponies, but they do not die. They kill our best warriors by the dozens, and there is only 6. They do not stop. They unleash great spells upon us. They penetrate our defenses and mercilessly descend to our home. If not demon ponies, what are they?"
The shaman placed her forehead back against the ground.
"Spare us! If demons agree to leave and not destroy our home, we will give demons 1,000 gemstones. We will give demons the souls of our firstborn pups. Does Dark One seek to punish us? We work hard, we swear." "Tell me about this Dark One,"
Twilight said.
"Dark One dwells beneath. Dark Pony makes the bones of our ancestors walk again if we do not do his bidding. But he promises that we will be blessed after we die in return,"
the shaman said. Twilight glanced over her shoulder. While the shaman was speaking, the swarm of diamond dogs had arrived at the corner and stopped in the passage. They listened in silence, save for the occasional yelp when an insect stung one.
What does he have you do?
Twilight asked.
Pony diggers dig, and then we pour on the red rock where they dig. We know not why Dark One has us pour, only that it pleases him. Pour what? Tell me,
Twilight said, making sure to insert wrath into her tone. If the Diamond Dogs realized that they weren't demons and went back to trying to kill them, they could easily be overrun. The shaman squirmed on the floor, whimpering.
He told us not to show ponies. He told us not to be seen.
Besides Twilight, Rarity spoke, her horn glowing. Rarity's voice filled the chamber, and the light warped, darkening.
We are demon ponies, pitiful creature.
Her voice echoed off the walls, several shades deeper than it was normally.
Tell us what we want to know, or we will consume the souls of your firstborns, and then we will come after you. Please, no! Spare us! We show demon ponies!
Frantically, the shaman sat up on her haunches and beckoned one of the warriors to step forward. The selected warrior gingerly crept past the group of ponies, knelt, and pulled a bottle of green liquid from a pouch, presenting it to Twilight. She snatched it from his grip and inspected the vial. The liquid within surged and bubbled.
I think I know what's wrong with the iron,
she murmured. She glanced around at the Diamond Dogs.
They were here before the iron mine,
she realized. This was their home, and they had fought tooth and claw to defend it. Now, something deeper beneath was manipulating them. When she spoke again, her voice carried all the authority she could muster.
You will take us to the Dark One. Let us pass through your tunnels unhindered and stop pouring. Don't fear the Dark One. We'll deal with him. When we are finished, you may continue to live here in safety. But if you attack or steal from the nearby pony town, we will return and you will be destroyed. If you give the ponies the rocks that they want, they'll give you food in return. If you negotiate, you'll get a fair deal. Do all of this, and you'll be spared.
The shaman nodded fervently.
Destroy Dark One! Yes!
She cried.
Destroy Dark One! We shall do as Demon Pony commands.
The two Diamond Dog warriors assigned to guide them led them ever deeper down twisting tunnels, and Twilight was beginning to suspect that the shaman had tricked them. The Diamond Dogs could be trying to get them so lost that they could never find their way back to the surface, or the Diamond Dog's cavern. Her sore muscles protested as they clambered through the narrow tunnels. The haste spell came with a price. A second of movement under the effects of that spell taxed the body like 10 seconds of activity. Now the spell itself was long gone, but the price stayed with her. Mercifully, when the tunnel emerged into a cavern, they finally stopped. The Diamond Dogs pointed across the cavern at a case full of vials filled with the green liquid.
This is where we get poor. We go no further. Ancestors walk down there. Stay here then, and wait for us,
Twilight ordered. The Diamond Dogs squirmed with displeasure at the task, but beneath her gaze, they nodded fearfully. Twilight stepped out into the cavern. In contrast to the barren land above, down here, a large, mirror-smooth pond reflected back the light of her horn. When she looked down at her reflection, she understood why the Diamond Dogs mistook her for a demon. Her coat was matted and stained crimson from her first encounter with them. Next to her, Solstice floated with its blade as blood-stained as her coat. To them, she must have been death, unstoppable. and inevitable. Twilight skirted the pool, her group following. While she made her way toward the case, Twilight wondered what time it was up above.
How long has Brayburn been waiting for us? Do the Appleloosan's think we're all dead?
All she knew for certain was that it had been hours, and she was tired. In stark contrast to the natural cavern, beside the case of vials, a square-edged passage led into darkness. Twilight paused in front of the corridor, letting the light of her horn shine down it. It terminated in a perfectly square T-intersection.
Any traps?
She said, glancing at Pinky and Rarity. She had learned that they both had an eye for details that she would sometimes miss. Rarity and Pinky glanced down the passage.
I'm not seeing anything,
Rarity said. Pinky stepped across the threshold and pointed.
Nope. There's something there. See that hole next to the corner?
With it pointed out to her, Twilight could see what Pinky had noticed.
Where's the trigger? Oh, I see it,
Rarity said.
It's right.
Rarity lit her horn, and a narrow row of small, faintly inscribed magical runes glowed midway down the passage.
There.
Between the two of them, Rarity and Pinky extracted the wand without tripping the trap.
It looks the same as the one the Diamond Dogs had,
Rarity observed.
Do you think this dock one gave them wands? Actually, if I were to guess, I would say that the shaman made them,
Twilight said.
Do you see these claw marks? A Diamond Dog at least handled this one too.
Rarity blinked.
Huh. I didn't think Diamond Dogs could do magic. They can't. At least, not the same way unicorns can. But magic is a part of Equestria. Magic formed solely from ingredients is typically called voodoo, and conventional understanding holds that it doesn't exist. Even alchemy is merely the art of making a liquid medium that can hold spells. They say that for magic to work, somewhere along the line, a spellcaster had to cast a spell, but they're wrong,
Twilight said. It was a chilling realization that her books had betrayed her. She realized she had known it was true ever since her argument with Applejack. She could never assume something was true. She had to know it was true. Celestia said there was darkness down here, and now she was about to find out what it was for herself. She strode confidently forward down the dark corridor. She would finally have some answers. It didn't take long for Twilight to realize that they were in an ancient mausoleum. Once they were inside, nooks filled with the mummified remains of long-dead ponies occupied the walls. The much fresher bones of Diamond Dogs littered the floor.
Someone brought them here,
Twilight realized.
Looks like these are what he used to scare the Diamond Dogs,
she said. Rainbow picked up one of the Diamond Dog's skulls and held it in her hoof.
What'd he do, put on a bone outfit and dance around? What a boner!
Pinky said, snickering. Twilight frowned. She could not understand how Pinky could be laughing after what they had done to the Diamond Dogs, after what she had seen in Twilight's wake.
No, he animated them,
Twilight said. Rainbow dropped the skull, shocked.
What? You can do that? I thought that was just a scary story. Certain clerics can, and there are arcane spells that have a similar effect. I know Celestia's clerics never do it, but others do,
Twilight said. So we're probably dealing with a cleric who can animate corpses, Applejack said. Sounds like he earned the name Dark One. Twilight stepped around a corner.
Well, we're about to find out.
Ahead, a light that wasn't coming from her horn illuminated a doorway. She moved toward it, her hooves clopping softly on the stone. Surely whatever lurked down here knew they were coming. When she arrived at the door, she stopped and stared in shock. Sitting there at a dark wooden desk, scribbling away at some parchment with a quill in his mouth, sat an earth pony stallion in silken robes. Around him was a room decorated with fine furniture, lush rugs, and a large 4-poster bed. Tapestries hung from the walls of the tomb. The pony at the desk didn't even look up at Twilight. "What? Are they out of vials again? Just grab some more. They're in the same place that they always are." The pony sat around his quill and gestured over his shoulder. Twilight followed the gesture with her eyes. In the corner, beside a large mirror, a pile of cases full of green vials rested. "Well, chop chop, we don't have all day. Come on, just because you're dead doesn't mean you're brain dead." "Well, maybe it does," the pony said. Twilight continued to just stand there, stunned. This was not what she had been expecting to find. She had been expecting an armored pony like the Black Knight, standing there, ready to do battle with her. She expected to fight for her life once again. The pony sighed, planting his face in his hooves. "I am a cleric of the nightmare cloaked in obscene power, but apparently that does not entitle me to decent help." He pulled his hoof from his face and turned toward Twilight. "I mean, you can't hold a conversation. The least you could do is your job, you stupid—" The quill dropped from his mouth. "How?"
Tell me everything you know,
Twilight said, brandishing Solstice while she closed the distance between her and the pony at the desk. The pony's eyes started to glow with a black-silver light, but before he had time to cast, she stuck him in the gut with her sword. He fell backwards out of his chair as she pulled Solstice free, the glow in his eyes gone. He groaned, clutching at his gut with his forehooves. Twilight glanced at the fresh blood streaking her blade, and she knew she had stabbed too deep. She didn't want him dead, she wanted answers.
Fluttershy, heal him. I can't,
Fluttershy murmured. Twilight whirled on her.
What do you mean you can't?
She shouted. Fluttershy cringed.
I used the last of my magic saving angel. I'm sorry. I can try.
The pony on the floor laughed dryly. I guess I'm going to die then. I was going to be a lich. They say only wizards can become liches. Silly, arrogant unicorns, he rambled. Twilight turned back to the pony she had stabbed. She was so close to answers. She placed her hoof on him, trying to heal him like she'd healed herself and Pinky. Twilight, what are you doing? Applejack asked. It was no use. Either she couldn't focus or she needed rest before she could do it again.
This wasn't how it was supposed to happen,
she yelled. I know what you mean, the dying pony said, his eyes going distant. I got too complacent, fat and lazy. Have you seen my cave? It's very nice. Nobody should be able to get me down here. Oh well. They're going to eat you now. I made it so that they would do that if somebody got me. It's too bad. I was going to be a lich. I was so close.
Tell me about the Black Knight!
Twilight shouted, violently, desperately shaking him with her hooves. The pony coughed after she shook him, his eyes going crossed.
Shiny, 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 hiding in the dark.
He focused on Twilight.
You'd better run. They're coming. All my beautiful, beautiful bones.
She could see him getting paler by the moment. There wasn't much blood oozing from his belly, but she knew he was bleeding internally.
Can't you heal yourself?
She yelled in his face. She heard the clopping of hooves and the snapping of bones coming from the doorway.
Twilight? I don't think they're friendly, dead ponies,
Pinky said.
I could also kill you with a spell. I'm pretty sure you'd stab me again if I tried. Getting stabbed hurts. Good life lesson,
He said.
Time. More time. I need more time.
Twilight cast a spell. It hit the doorway as the first mummified pony reached it. Thick, gooey webbing shot out, covering the doorway and spreading down the corridor. She saw the mummy stop, held back by the webs, and returned her focus to the pony on the floor.
Tell me!
She cried. She needed what she had done to get down here to mean something.
I didn't do it because I wanted to. Tell you?
He glanced over at a spot on the wall.
Tell you how to get out? I've got a way, but I'm not telling. They're going to eat you.
He started to laugh, but it quickly deteriorated into a fit of coughs. She shook him again, harder.
Tell me about him! Tell me! Tell me! Tell me!
She felt a hoof on her shoulder. It's done, Twilight, Applejack said. Twilight blinked. The pony's eyes were staring lifelessly up at her. She heard the sound of stone sliding against stone and looked up. Rarity stood next to the spot on the wall the dying pony had looked at. A portion of the wall had swung open, revealing a hidden tunnel. We need to leave, Applejack said. Twilight nodded and turned to the desk. It was empty. The papers were gone. The drawers were scattered on the floor, also empty. She rushed toward it in disbelief and frantically swept her hooves over the surface of the desk, spilling the inkwell, but there was nothing there.
Where are they?
Twilight shrieked.
I already got them,
Rarity said. Twilight swallowed, her eyes traveling first to the skeletons clawing their way through the webbing, then to the dead pony on the floor, and finally to the open door where her friends waited. There was nothing left down here. She rushed over to her friends, and they galloped down the passage. Out of spite, once they had made it at a safe distance, Twilight turned and launched a fireball into the room. She smiled with satisfaction when the explosion swept down the corridor and rattled her skull. Then she heard a second explosion, and her eyes widened.
Crap! Run! Already doing that!
Rainbow shouted from ahead.
The green flasks are flammable! Very, very flammable!
Twilight yelled as she sprinted after her friends, explosions rattling the corridor behind her. Twilight lay on her back in the sand. The fact that it was morning, and they had spent all night underground, was the first thing Twilight noticed when she cleared the collapsing passageway. The second thing she had noticed was that all of her friends had made it out ahead of her. She could barely move her legs. She wanted to rest, but some part of her mind knew that she couldn't stay out in the sun.
Come on, get off your flanks and on your hooves,
she heard Rainbow shout in her ear. Twilight groaned and curled into a ball, her eyes closed. It had taken all the strength she had to sprint full speed down that passage, with the light at the end her only promise of salvation. She had thought it was never going to end. The light never seemed to get any closer until suddenly, she was outside. She heard a heavy hoof fall and a deep snort.
Who are you? Stop,
Rainbow said. The hooves moved toward her.
I'm warning you,
Rainbow said. Twilight flicked her eyes open. She made out the outline of a pony with an unusually large head above her. Rainbow fell onto the sand beside her, out cold. A hoof touched Twilight on the forehead, directly below her horn. The figure's eyes appeared when they glowed with a soft green light. Peace, little shadow. Twilight's world went dark.